Oh my goodness, Owl, this year is so lively. The US, Russia, China, then India, and now Vietnam. Every country seems to be competing to hold grand military parades.
That's right, Monkey. In 2025, the world has witnessed a series of massive military parades across many countries. Each parade carries a political message and a warning sent to the world. Let's take a look back at the major parades of 2025. For India, January 26, 2025 is not just the celebration of the 76th Republic Day. Behind the dazzling parade in New Delhi lies a strategic message. New Delhi has shifted away from the trajectory of a continental power to become a maritime security pillar in the Indo-Pacific. In this year's parade formation, India unveiled the most crucial pieces of its new power. The Visakhapatnam-class P-15B destroyers are now complete, with INS Surat entering service to close the series of 4. Combined with the Delhi and Kolkata classes, the Indian Navy now fields 10 modern destroyers, all capable of carrying the BrahMos, a supersonic cruise missile regarded as the decisive strike at sea. In recent years, India has strived to build what is known as the nuclear triad, the ability to launch nuclear strikes from 3 domains: land, air, and sea. The goal is to ensure that even if subjected to a first strike, New Delhi would still retain a credible nuclear retaliatory capability. The most critical pillar of this triad is the nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, SSBN. Operating silently beneath the ocean, these submarines are difficult to detect and are always ready to deliver a retaliatory strike. India currently has 2 SSBNs in service. INS Arihant, the country's first nuclear submarine, which entered service in 2016. It can carry 12 K-15 missiles with a range of 750 kilometers, or 4 K-4 missiles with a range of 3,500 kilometers, sufficient to strike strategic targets in Pakistan and parts of Chinese territory. INS Arigat, the second submarine, was officially commissioned in August 2024. This marked a turning point, as India can now maintain continuous deterrent patrols. One submarine on active deployment at sea, while the other undergoes maintenance or remains on standby at base. Placed in the regional context, Arihant and Arigat bring India closer to the nuclear deterrence posture of the US, Russia, and China. That is, always maintaining a hidden force beneath the oceans, ensuring that any adversary must think twice before taking action. In the air, a diverse formation ranging from Su-30 MKI and Rafale to Tejas Mk-1A demonstrates how India combines its imported backbone with its domestic pillar. The fleet of roughly 736 fighter aircraft reflects a very Indian paradox. Vast in numbers, yet gradually transitioning toward an ecosystem increasingly under India's own control. But what truly matters is not just the modern weaponry. Geopolitics is the core. India now faces a 2-front dilemma: Pakistan to the west and China to the north and east. After years of tense clashes along the line of actual control in the Himalayas, New Delhi has realized that focusing solely on land defense is not enough for effective deterrence. It needs to extend its influence to the sea in order to secure its vital maritime routes. Take the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, for example, a position that dominates the gateway to the Strait of Malacca, through which nearly 40% of global trade passes. India has been strengthening its naval presence there, while also expanding across the entire Indian Ocean to monitor and protect strategic sea lines of communication. The doctrine of security and growth for all in the region, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Sagar vision, goes beyond diplomatic slogans. It is backed by the creation of a truly blue water navy, capable of long-range operations, ready to deter external threats and reinforce India's leadership role in the Indo-Pacific. This year's parade also revealed a layer of subtle defense diplomacy. Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority nation, for the first time sent 352 troops to march along New Delhi's Kartavya Path. It was a highly symbolic image. India is extending its security circle south of the equator, linking the India-Southeast Asia axis. And behind that picture lie deeper networks, the Quad with the US, Japan, and Australia, logistics and intelligence sharing agreements, and a dense schedule of exercises, from Malabar to bilateral drills across the Indian Ocean. On nuclear policy, India continues to uphold its no first use doctrine while strengthening credible deterrence by maintaining SSBN patrols, upgrading its sea-based ballistic missiles, K-15/K4, and ensuring smooth coordination of its nuclear triad across the Army, Air Force, and Navy. Its roughly 180 warheads are not meant for a numbers race, but to signal strategic stability in a region fraught with escalation risks. Putting it all together, the picture of India in 2025 becomes very clear through the numbers. Active personnel of about 1.46 to 1.48 million. An air force with roughly 2,300 aircraft in total, including about 736 fighters. A navy with 10 modern destroyers, 2 aircraft carriers, Vikramaditya and Vikrant, and 2 operational SSBNs. A nuclear arsenal of around 180 warheads. These figures are not meant to compete with anyone, but to ensure multi-directional deterrence, from the Himalayan landfront to the gateways of the Indian Ocean. Therefore, India's 2025 parade was not merely a ceremonial display. It was a strategic statement written in the formations of a combined arms force. In the air, the ability to secure superiority. At sea, the capability to strike at long range. Under the water, enduring nuclear deterrence. And at the center of it all is a confident India, extending its security umbrella across the Indo-Pacific axis, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Quad, while connecting with Southeast Asia through steady, resounding marching steps that echo farther and farther.
India truly is rising to become a great power. But what about the United States, Owl? Do they really need to hold such massive parades?
The United States rarely puts on a show. However, 2025 is an exception. Let's see why Washington decided to hold a historic grand military parade. The United States does not often hold weapon display parades like those of continental powers. But 2025 was a symbolic exception, the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Army. In the heart of Washington, along the National Mall, around 6,500 service members, 150 military vehicles, 25 Abrams main battle tanks, and nearly 50 aircraft were mobilized for a rarely seen parade formation. On the surface, it was a historic ceremony. At the strategic level, it was a message to both adversaries and allies. The United States' capacity to project power remains vast, spanning land, sea, and air, sea, and even the depths of the ocean. Why does the United States need such a display at this moment? Because the post-Cold War security order is fracturing. In Europe, the Russia-Ukraine war has entered its 4th year with no sign of cooling down. In the Middle East, the Israel-Gaza conflict has triggered escalations and the risk of spreading wider. In the Indo-Pacific, strategic competition with China is becoming increasingly direct, from the Taiwan Strait to the South China Sea. In each of these flashpoints, the United States is bearing the role of deterrent, reassurance, and alliance leader. To achieve this, the United States maintains one of the world's largest and most capable military forces. The Navy sustains roughly 296 combat-capable warships, including 77 destroyers equipped with advanced combat systems, along with a smaller group of cruisers and 3 next-generation stealth destroyers. This fleet enables control of strategic sea lanes, convoy escort, missile interception, and the defense of allies. The submarine force is the backbone of deterrence. 14 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines conduct regular deterrent patrols, supported by about 48 nuclear-powered attack submarines tasked with reconnaissance, anti-submarine warfare, and long-range cruise missile strikes. The Air Force and Naval Aviation operate more than 13,000 aircraft of various types, from next-generation stealth fighters and long-range bombers to aerial refueling tankers and early warning aircraft. Air superiority is the core element that allows the U.S. to open the skies, shield ground forces, and protect fleets at sea. The U.S. nuclear force remains foremost, with over 5,000 warheads in total stockpile, about 1,800 of which are deployed and ready. The combination of land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, long-range bombers, and ballistic missile submarines forms a highly reliable nuclear triad. But the pillar of global security is not built only with steel, missiles, and jet engines. It also stands firm thanks to a network of alliances. In Europe, there is NATO, where Finland and Sweden have joined, adding strategic depth to the continent's north. In the Indo-Pacific, there is the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue comprising the United States, Japan, India, and Australia. The Trilateral Security Pact between the US, the UK, and Australia on nuclear submarine capability, and expanded military agreements with the Philippines allowing greater forward logistics access. All of this weaves into a multi-layered deterrence network, enabling the United States and its partners to respond swiftly in times of crisis. The parade marking the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army was not just a celebration. It sent a message to allies that the United States remains capable of shouldering global security, and to adversaries that its joint combat capabilities, spanning the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force, are undergoing robust modernization. Although debates continue at home over the costs, the administration sought to use the parade to tell the story of force modernization, persuading the public that long-term investment in national security is essential. Thus, America's 2025 parade was a strategic declaration, reassuring allies, deterring adversaries, and building domestic consensus for military strength in the decade ahead.
The United States has already showcased its most advanced weapons. Surely Russia won't just sit back and watch, Owl.
That's right, Monkey. Russia has just responded with a grand parade in Red Square, even as the war in Ukraine continues to rage. Let's take a look at what message Moscow wants to send. On May 9th, 2025, Moscow held a parade on Red Square to mark the 85th Victory Day. On the surface, it was a historic ceremony. At a deeper level, it was an assertion that even as the war in Ukraine enters its fourth year, Russia still retains the ability to mobilize large-scale forces and sustain the rhythm of ritual, military governance. This year's formation included more than 11,000 service members and around 180 to 183 pieces of military equipment on Red Square, a figure rarely seen since 2022. At the same time, the presence of foreign leaders was the highest in years. Chinese President Xi Jinping, Brazilian President Lula da Silva, along with numerous heads of state from Asia, Africa, and the Commonwealth of Independent States. Russia sought to demonstrate that it is not isolated despite the web of sanctions surrounding it. The novelty this year was the first ever appearance on Red Square of unmanned aerial vehicles currently used in Ukraine. Lancet kamikaze drones, Geran 2, Orlan 10/Orlan 30, displayed alongside ground-based firepower systems. The message was clear. Warfare is changing, and Russia regards drones as the spearhead. Alongside them were T-90M tanks, S-400 air defense systems, Tornado-S multiple rocket launchers, and most notably, the Yars intercontinental ballistic missile system, enduring symbols of long-range deterrence. Not only in the capital, the total number of military vehicles paraded across Russia reached 1,409, an increase of more than 50% compared to 2024, around 912. The number of localities that had to cancel or hold parades without equipment also declined. This was a signal aimed at the domestic audience. Industrial and logistical capacity still has momentum. Behind the columns of vehicles, artillery, and missiles stands the true pillar of deterrence: Russia's nuclear triad. Land-based ballistic missiles, strategic bombers, and nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, was further reinforced with the commissioning of the Bory A-class submarine Knyaz Pozharsky on July 24, 2025. Bringing an additional strategic nuclear submarine into service in wartime is a declaration of enduring retaliatory capability, especially with sea-launched ballistic missiles. At the strategic level, independent assessments indicate that by early 2025, Russia possessed about 5,459 nuclear warheads in its total stockpile. of which around 1,718 were deployed with operational forces. Together, Russia and the United States still hold nearly 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, while both are accelerating modernization programs. This explains why systems like the Yars frequently appear in major ceremonies. They serve as instruments of deterrence against adversaries. The presence of numerous heads of state, from China to several Latin American and African countries, was maximized by the Kremlin to send a message. Moscow still has many partners, the world order is deeply divided, and Russia is not standing alone. Western media echoed this as a diplomatic performance, but for the domestic audience, it was presented as evidence reinforcing the legitimacy of the war. For the Russian people, expanding the scale of parades across military districts and bringing actual combat equipment such as drones onto the square is a way of blending the memory of World War II with the current war. Psychologically, it serves as reassurance. The home front still beats, industry still runs, and the military continues to evolve. Taken together, Russia's 2025 parade carried 3 layers of meaning. First, a display of combat strength in wartime, particularly the shift toward high-tech warfare with drones. Second, reinforcement of nuclear deterrence through the image of intercontinental missiles and the continued commissioning of strategic nuclear submarines. Third, a political alliance showcase, reflected in the guest list, to demonstrate that Russia is not isolated. These are the 3 layers of messaging that Moscow wants the world to remember with every step marching across Red Square.
As far as I know, this year is also a very special occasion in Vietnam, with them holding a military parade, right, Al?
That's right, Monkey. Vietnam is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the liberation of the South and the 80th National Day. Their 2025 parade was held in a very grand and spectacular manner.
Trường tồn và phát triển.
On September 2nd, 2025, Ba Dinh Square, the birthplace of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, once again became the focal point of the entire nation. 80 years ago, President Ho Chi Minh read the Declaration of Independence, and today, tens of thousands of marching steps resound in unison as a reminder. Independence and freedom are the immutable values of the Vietnamese people. The September 2nd, 2025 parade featured around 16,000 service members. They came from all branches: the Army, Navy, Air Defense Air Force, Border Defense Force, and Coast Guard. The mechanized formations included tanks, artillery, surface-to-surface missiles, S-300 PMU-1 air defense units, as well as specialized engineering and logistics vehicles stretching along the avenue. Altogether, it presented a portrait of a professional, elite, and modern Vietnamese military. Over Ba Dinh Square, a squadron of Su-30 Mk2s roared through the sky, tearing across the air to open the aerial segment. Right after came the formation of Me-8, Me-17, and Me-171 helicopters carrying a massive red flag with a yellow star. The performance concluded with aircraft drawing the national flag across the sky, a sight that deeply moved millions of people watching live. Notably, the parade also featured military honor guards from China, Russia, Laos, and Cambodia. They marched solemnly across Ba Dinh Square as a statement that Vietnam has trusted friends standing alongside it in the journey to safeguard peace and regional stability. The September 2nd, 2025 parade was not only a ceremony to mark the 85th National Day, it was Vietnam's political military declaration. They remain steadfast on the path of national independence. They have the strength to defend the fatherland, from the land to the skies and the seas and islands. They stand together with international friends to safeguard peace.
And what about Vietnam's northern neighbor, China, the world's second largest power, Owl?
Beijing has just held a massive military parade right at Tiananmen Square, on a scale that astonished the world, coming just one day after Vietnam's. On September 3rd, 2025, in the very heart of Tiananmen Square, Beijing held a parade to mark the 85th anniversary of the end of World War II. On the reviewing stand, 3 figures stood side by side: Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Kim Jong-un. That image was not merely ceremonial. It was the political message Beijing sought to convey. China stands at the center of a new power network, aiming to reshape the regional order and even the global one. The parade showcased not only troop numbers but also technological depth. For the first time, China presented its complete nuclear triad: land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, including the DF-5C and the new long-range road-mobile DF-61, submarine-launched JL-3 ballistic missiles, and air-launched systems alongside them were hypersonic missiles such as the DF-17 and a range of unmanned aircraft, from large UAVs in the form of unmanned fighters to unmanned helicopters carrying maritime payloads. Even unmanned underwater vehicles made an appearance. This was a ledger display of the defense industry. China sought to demonstrate that it possesses joint, multi-domain combat capabilities from the seabed to low Earth orbit. In terms of foreign affairs, the lineup of leaders in attendance said it all. Russia, North Korea, and more than 20 heads of state from countries friendly to Beijing, with very few Western faces. The parade took place just 2 days after the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit Week in Tianjin, where President Xi Jinping hosted over 20 leaders. Taken together, the two events formed a week of power, designed both to showcase military strength and to foster political connections, very much in the spirit of power display diplomacy.
What message does China want to send?
There are 3 layers of messaging. First, strategic deterrence and the demand for parity with the United States. Showcasing the full nuclear triad in the capital demonstrates that they have advanced another step in deterrence capability. The appearance of the DF-61, described as a new generation long-range road-mobile missile, and the MIRV-capable DF-5C, along with the presence of the JL-3 from the submarine force, was Beijing's way of saying, "We have retaliatory options from land, air, and sea." Second, a regional message regarding Taiwan and the South China Sea. Formations of hypersonic anti-ship missiles and undersea combat UAVs sent warnings to adversary carrier groups and bases around the first island chain. This is the very anti-access lock against distant intervention that China has been targeting for over a decade. Third, affirmation of industrial and mobilization capacity. From H-6 bombers to the new UAV/UCAV cluster modeled as unmanned fighter jets, dubbed Type B by observers, and shipborne unmanned helicopters, Beijing wanted to show that its defense supply chain can mass produce and rapidly innovate, thanks to the fusion of civilian and military sectors. To grasp the weight behind the formations marching through Tiananmen, one must look at the forces backing them. Navy. China's Navy is now the largest in the world by numbers, with over 370 ships and submarines, more than 140 of which are major surface combatants, modern destroyers and cruisers. By mid-2024, China was completing its 9th and 10th Type 055 heavy destroyers, with the first 8 already commissioned. The Type 052D line continues long-term production. Ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs. U.S. and congressional assessments indicate that China reached about 6 units, Type 094 class, by 2025, giving the sea leg of its nuclear triad greater substance. Air Force and Naval Aviation, a total fleet of over 3,150 aircraft, excluding trainers and UAVs, of which about 2,400 are combat airframes, fighters, strike aircraft, bombers. The domestically built J-20 stealth fighter is accelerating in production, while the H-6 continues to serve as a long-range missile truck. Nuclear deterrence. SIPRI Yearbook 2025 estimated China's arsenal at around 600 warheads by early 2025. The fastest growth in the world in recent years, tied to its expanding ICBM silo fields in the north and east. The U.S. Department of Defense, CMPR 2024, likewise assessed over 600 operational warheads by mid-2024, projecting the stockpile to surpass 1,000 by 2030 if the pace continues. Thus, although their reasons differ, all 5 nations chose 2025 to stage massive military parades. India asserted its role in the Indian Ocean. The United States reinforced its position as a global power. Russia sent the message of no retreat. Vietnam affirmed its strength in defending the fatherland and its spirit of international solidarity. China demonstrated its superpower ambitions. Amid war and power rivalries, these parades were not merely commemorations. They were, in fact, political declarations in a world marked by instability.
If you found this video interesting and useful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to support the channel. Every bit of your support is a huge motivation for us to create even more exciting videos. Thank you so much.